Hello, and welcome to Florida Friendly Landscaping Program's Homeowner Webinar Series. It's a series given every third Tuesday of the month at 11 a.m. My name is Susanna Browning, and I'm the Youth Education Coordinator for FFL Program State Office. Today we have Claire Mitchell, who will speak with us about hiring Florida Friendly. First, your microphones have to be muted, please. If you have questions, please type them in the question and answer box instead of the chat box, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Please stick around until the end to take this exit survey. This helps me give you the kind of programming you like and let us know how we're doing. Our next webinar will be December 15th at 11 a.m. We'll be joined by Katie Dietz, PhD candidate in plant pathology at UF, for a talk about conserving deadwood in urban green spaces. Today, we'll be talking with Claire Mitchell. Claire is the education manager for the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program State Office. She focuses on promoting sustainable landscape practices through education and training for Florida homeowners and HOA leaders to select, plant, and care for water-wise landscapes that conserve resources and protect the environment. So before Claire takes this away, we want to ask you an icebreaker. Why are you interested in the topic of today's webinar? Also, what's your purpose for attending this webinar? If you could type that in the chat box, we would love to hear your comments. Claire, thank you for joining us today, and take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Claire Mitchell, and I am really happy to be here today to share this webinar with you. So what we're going to be doing today is, here's our agenda. We're going to be talking about what is the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, what makes a professional Florida Friendly, and also some guidance and resources for choosing a Florida Friendly landscape professional, and changing professional landscape maintenance practices in your HOA. So that is kind of, that last topic is kind of specific to people who are here from HOAs, and we'll be giving you some specific guidance on that. So first, we'll start out with what is the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. So Florida Friendly Landscaping is actually written into the Florida state statutes. And these landscapes are quality landscapes that conserve water, protect the environment, and are adaptable to local conditions that are drought tolerant. And we use 9 science-based principles that promote environmentally friendly landscaping practices. Why is this program important? Well, it was important because we're here to protect water. Everything that you do in your yard can affect water, and it's so important here in Florida because we have the highest concentration of springs in the world, the largest aquifer in the U.S., and over 1,000 springs, 7,500 lakes, and 1,700 rivers and streams. So what we do in our yard affects our water resources. Our water quantity is affected by increased urbanization. So our population is expected to grow about 10 million people in the next 50 years, and this is putting more and more pressure on our water resources. The habitats that filter water are also being destroyed by development, and water that would normally recharge into our aquifer runs off on pavement. So water quality is also a big issue. We have point source pollution, which is, we don't have quite as much here in Florida. This is mainly from factories, something where you can trace the pollution back to a single source. Non-point source pollution, this is our #1 threat to water quality here in Florida, according to the EPA. This is pollution that can't be pinpointed to any one place. So this is pollution from landscapes, urban areas, agriculture. All of this pollution flows into storm drains and other water bodies. Water, having clean water and plenty of water supports our economy. We have a ton of money spent here on tourism, and more than half of our tourism dollars are spent in beach destinations. That was $56 billion in 2022. So if we have water quality issues like red tide or blue-green algae where people can't visit the beach, that's a really big detriment to our economy. We also have commercial and recreational fishing here in Florida, and we also need clean water for agriculture. And finally, clean and plentiful water matters for human health. 90% of our drinking water comes from the Floridan aquifer, and storm water that is polluted with fertilizer can escape from our landscapes and can seep down into our aquifer and affect our drinking water. Also, excessive landscape irrigation depletes our drinking water, so that leaves less and less for our household use. So as I said before, fertilizer runoff exacerbates the duration and intensity of harmful algal blooms. And so these harmful algal blooms are dangerous to human health. They can affect, they have neurological symptoms. They can cause skin rashes, respiratory issues. So all of these things are connected with water quality. And your yard can make a difference with this, whether you're doing your own maintenance or hiring out. 60% of homeowner water use is used on irrigation. Drinking water outside on our plants, and urban fertilizer also contributes to our pollution problems. So if you implement Florida-friendly landscaping practices in your yard, you can conserve 84%, you use 84% less irrigation than a traditional landscape. This can conserve 15,000 gallons of irrigation water per year. Florida-friendly landscapes are healthy and resilient. They require fewer maintenance costs and fewer inputs like water, fertilizer, and pesticides. And the way that we promote sustainable landscaping is we provide education throughout the state for homeowners, homeowner associations, and youth. We provide education to communities like municipalities, utilities, and builders and developers. And what we'll be focusing on mostly today is our education for landscape professionals. We have the Green Industries Best Management Program and the Florida Friendly Certified Professionals Program. We'll be talking about some of those. And as I said before, the goals of FFL are to conserve water and to protect water quality. And we do this through our 9 science-based principles. And this is a really quick overview of our 9 principles. I'm hoping a lot of you are familiar with this by now, but if you're new to our webinars, you might not be. We'll be going through how landscape practices affect all of these principles, but we have right plant, right place. That is pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of people don't do it. If your plant needs shade, you need to plant it in the shade. If your plant needs a lot of water, you need to be grouping it with plants that need a lot of water. If you have a slope, maybe you don't need to be planting turf there. That's very hard and dangerous to maintain. Maybe you need a ground cover, things like that. Watering efficiently means using your irrigation water in a way that conserves water. Fertilizing appropriately means using the correct amount of fertilizer so it doesn't leach off into our stormwater runoff. Mulch, that also conserves water and suppresses weeds, attracting wildlife that brings animals and insects to your yard. Managing yard pests responsibly means if you do have pests, controlling them in the right way, and trying to prevent you having pests in the first place. Recycling yard waste talks really about pruning and how can you keep the nutrients that are in your yard, how to keep them in your yard so you can use them again. And then we have reducing stormwater runoff, keeping your water in your yard, and protecting the waterfront, which is trying to keep sediment, fertilizer, pesticides, invasives out of your waterways. So what makes a landscape professional Florida friendly? Oh no, this is what I was scared of. All right, woo, we're back. My goodness. What makes a landscape professional Florida friendly? We are going to swap. My goodness. We provide education to landscape professionals in 3 main areas. We have the GIBMP program, the FFLCP program, and we also have continuing education units. So the GIBMP program, this is a required program that a landscape professional must go through if they apply fertilizer. They're required by law to get the limited certification for urban landscape commercial fertilizer application. So before receiving that certification, they have to complete the GIBMP course. And this is taught by industry educators and extension agents, and it covers these topics. It covers design and installation of landscapes, mulching, mowing, and pruning, irrigation, fertilization, and pest control. And the FFLCP program, this is a program that is not required, but it's kind of an additional certification for landscape professionals who are interested. This is a program that we teach, the FFL program teaches, and it covers the introduction to the FFL program, legislation, codes in the communities, maintenance with FFL, turf grass, our recognition program, and design considerations. So a professional will go through this course online, the self-paced program, but then they'll attend a field day in person. And this is, as I said, it's not mandatory, but if you hire a professional who has gone through this program, you know that they're familiar with the 9 principles and they are have been educated about maintenance practices that support our mission of protecting water. Some landscape professional certifications require continuing education units, and this is for landscape architects, arborists, limited urban fertilizer license, limited lawn and ornamental license. Lots of licenses require CEUs. So we host a monthly webinar series for professionals, and we also offer workshops through County Extension. I have this big QR code here because many of the things that I'm going to be going through on the next few slides are from our checklist for hiring a landscape professional. So if you would like to scan this and have this open for future use, this will help you kind of guide you through the interview process when you're talking with a landscape professional to see if they're going to fit your needs. So mowing is a service that a lot of people need if they're looking for lawn care or for landscape care. And following mowing best practices can really improve the health of your turf. And so you want to make sure that your landscape professional is following these practices. And it's tied to several of our 9 principles. So cutting grass to the proper height reduces the need for water and fertilizer. If you cut your grass too low, it stresses out the plant. And so it needs more water to recover. It needs more nutrients to grow back to the color and height that you want it to. So you would never want to remove more than 1/3 of the leaf blade. And you also want to keep the grass clippings on the lawn because they are full of nutrients. And if they wash into our waterways, they can increase pollution. So this really ties into watering efficiently and fertilizing appropriately and protecting the waterways. We have some more BMPs for mowing. The first is to keep grass clippings on the lawn, not blown over the street or the sidewalks. See that all the time. You can break up large clumps of grass clippings, ensure that the mower blades are sharp, and change the mowing directions at each mowing. So all of these little points that I have here, these are things that you would want to be asking your professional to make sure that these are things that they're considering. So here we are for right plant, right place. This is our first principle. This is our most important principle. So if your landscape is designed with this in mind, you will be working with nature instead of fighting against it. So as I said, if a plant needs full sun, don't plant it in the shade. And if your plant has low water needs, don't install it next to a bunch of plants that have higher water needs. It's going to stress out your plant. So if you think out your design in the first place or hire a landscape architect who really is familiar with our principles and knows how to group plants, this can prevent some issues down the line. These are some questions that you can ask a designer, whether that's like a professional landscape designer, or I know some landscaping companies will also design and install landscapes as well. So are your plants located in site conditions that are well suited to their needs? Have they used a soil test to make sure that the plant is in the right place? Have they spaced plants based on their mature size? Many times, landscape designers want the landscape to look really full from the outset and will group plants way too close together. As they get bigger, that stresses the plant out and makes them really crowded and can cause problems. Are the plants grouped by their water needs? As I said, low water plants should be grouped together. High water plants should be grouped together. Are there any invasive plants in the landscape? If that's something that you're interested in finding out, you can look up IFAS assessment and put in the name of your plant to see if it is invasive. And then one thing that we talk about is planting turf areas to be functional and design them for easy maintenance. And by functional, we mean, do you have kids? Do you have pets? If you're not really using your turf as an open area, then there are other ways that you can design your landscape to conserve more water. Other things to consider in landscape design are using shrubs and ground covers where grass is difficult to maintain. This picture is actually from my parents' house. And when I was growing up, I would watch my dad push this mower up and down this hill every weekend. And when they redesigned their landscape, they ended up planting a low maintenance ground cover on their slope, and now it's much less work and much safer to maintain. Um, Landscape features can be put into your landscape that retain water on your property. These are berms and swales that, as water runs off, it's collected in your landscape instead of running into the street. You can use porous materials for patios, driveways, and walkways. Are there plants in the landscape that provide a food source for birds and other wildlife? Are there host plants and nectar plants? Because wildlife, butterflies need both. They need a place to lay their larvae so their caterpillars can survive, but they also need nectar plants to eat. And then finally, if you are creating a new landscape, try to retain existing clusters of vegetation. So shrubs under trees, trees that are growing together, it helps them survive in the long run. Okay, and finally, are your landscape professionals following UFIF's planting guidelines? Are they selecting good quality plants? If you plant a stressed plant, it's just going to continue to be more and more stressed. So you want to make sure that they're choosing a high quality plant. Are the shrubs planted 2.5 feet away from the foundation of your home? Has mulch been installed for 2 to 3 inches, but it's been pulled away from the root ball? That's something that you also want to check for. Are they using recommended mulches? I'm going to have a mulch slide coming up. And are the plants watered for establishment according to UFIFA's guidelines? Establishment means that the plant can survive with no irrigation, but it will need some irrigation for the first few weeks or months of planting. And so you want to make sure that your landscape professional is familiar with the plant's water needs. Here's some tips for right plant, right place. Keep the front of your house visible. A lot of people will get really excited to plant a bunch of plants in their yard and don't realize that as everything grows, it's going to take a lot of work to maintain and prune everything back. This is another thing to consider, the plant's mature size. I bet that was a nice little bush when it was first planted, and now these people can barely get into their house. It is much easier to maintain plants if they are grouped together in a single landscape bed. So you can see all of these trees have their own little mulched area. And so if somebody's mowing this lawn, they're going to have to make circles around all of these. If this were one giant mulched bed, it would be much easier to maintain. And remember I said keep turf functional. You can see a yard like this, it still has turf. It has a ton of native plants and it has a ton of variety, but there's also a small turf area. So if somebody wanted to come outside and kick a soccer ball or let their dog out, they still have a nice place for that. Okay, next we're going to be talking about watering efficiently, and this mostly has to do with irrigation. And so keep in mind that in some Florida counties, it's required that an irrigation contractor is the only person who can work on your irrigation design, maintenance, and repair. So you might need to look up county guidelines to see if that is applicable to your county. So these slides might apply not to your irrigation contractor, but to a landscaping, I'm sorry, apply to an irrigation contractor. So we recommend in IFAS that you apply a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches of water per application. And you need to set the irrigation controller schedule to meet water management district rules. Some of our water management districts, there are 5, have restrictions of what days you can water and which houses can water. And so you need to make sure that your contractor is aware of these restrictions and that you're following them. Is your contractor going to do seasonal maintenance checks to check for clogs and leaks and to make sure that the spray heads are watering your landscape and not the sidewalk? And it is also required by law in Florida that we have rain shutoff devices. Rain shutoff devices are smart irrigation components, and they are rain sensors like this one picture, or maybe that's a soil moisture sensor. And it's required by law to sense when it's raining and then to turn off your automatic irrigation so you're not watering in the rain. And unfortunately, these devices break. And if your irrigation professional is coming over to do maintenance on their irrigation system, they're required to make sure that this sensor is working. So make sure to ask your professional about that and to ensure that yours is functional. Finally, we recommend that you install micro irrigation in your landscape beds. This is not really appropriate for turf because it includes a lot of little tubes and emitters, but they're perfect for landscape beds because they conserve a lot of water and they put the water just where it needs to go, not on, not spraying all over the mulch, not spraying all over to water weeds, but it's just spraying onto your plants, and it saves a lot of water. Okay, here's the fertilizer section. So we're going to be talking about what, how, and when to apply fertilizer. So, is your professional following UF recommendations for fertilizer rates and products? Fertilizing is actually very complicated, and the rates are complicated for the type of plant that you're fertilizing, when you can fertilize. Are you using quick release or slow release fertilizer? There are a lot of decisions and a lot of ways that as a homeowner you can mess up. And so we recommend that you hire a professional for, well, it's if you are not up to the task of looking up all of these rules and regulations that we have in our state, it can really save you a lot of headache and time to hire a professional for this because they might know about your local fertilizer ordinances. Many counties have blackouts in the summer where you're not allowed to fertilize, and your landscape professional will be familiar with all of these ordinances. You want to ask them if they use controlled release products. Quick release fertilizer washes out into your landscape and is much easily leached into the stormwater runoff. Quick release fertilizer releases fertilizer a little bit over time, and that's the product that we recommend that people use. Did your landscape professional use a soil test to determine if fertilizer was needed? If your soil is doing just fine, you might not need fertilizer, but you would not know that unless you had it tested first. Um, if your community uses reclaimed water for irrigation, that can also contain nutrients. So that's something that your professional needs to be aware of because that can affect the amount of fertilizer that they might apply. So it's just something that you need to talk about with your professional. And can your professional explain what products are being used and why in a way that's understandable? So you want to know what they're putting on your lawn, how much, and when. We have some recommendations of how to apply fertilizer. You can see in this picture, this is not a drop spreader. The drop spreaders, they apply fertilizer not in a very even way, and they can waste a lot of fertilizer, and they can also take off the protective coating that makes the fertilizer slow release. So I was kind of thinking about it like an M&M. The hard coating on the outside is you can suck on it, and then the fertilizer, their candy will release slowly. Same thing with the fertilizer with slow release coatings, and a drop spreader can remove that coating and turn it into a quick release fertilizer. Your fertilizer needs to have a deflector shield. That's the white part in this photo, and it has the little rotator that spreads the fertilizer more evenly. This also needs to be calibrated, and that's something that homeowners don't often do when they are fertilizing, and so this is something that your professional should be trained to do. Again, we want to keep the nutrients in the yard. So that means sweeping your grass clippings, fertilizer, and soil away from driveways and back into the lawn. And we also want to avoid applying fertilizer within 10 feet of any water body because when it rains, that fertilizer goes straight into your lake, pond, creek, canal. So we want to keep that a low maintenance zone. We'll talk about that a little more. Okay, as I was saying before, we do have timing for fertilizer, and you only want to fertilize when your grass is actively growing. So here in North Florida right now, it is cold and our grass is dormant and it is not growing. And so if it's not growing, it's not going to need fertilizer. So if you see a fertilizer applicator out in the middle of winter, they are not following UF recommendations of only applying fertilizer when the grass is growing. When new sod is planted, the root system is not fully developed, and so it cannot take up that fertilizer. So you want to delay fertilizing for 30 to 60 days after planting. Fertilizer blackouts often start in June or July, and it changes from county to county, so they need to be aware of their fertilizer ordinances. I don't apply fertilizer right before a heavy rain because that fertilizer can leach into our waterways if it is applied right before a, a big torrential rain. Um, if the landscaper notices any nutrient deficiencies, you would want to know about that and know what they would apply to correct those deficiencies. And then finally, for bigger landscape plants like shrubs, perennials, and trees, you want to avoid fertilizing right after planting for the same reason as you want to give the roots time to establish and be ready to take up nutrients. Okay, next we have mulch. Mulch is a big one. What kind of mulch does your landscape contractor use? Do they use Florida-friendly mulches? These are some examples: pine bark, pine straw, fallen leaves, melaleuca, eucalyptus, and utility mulch. And these are Florida-friendly because some of them are byproducts of the timber industry, like pine bark and pine straw. And some are sustainably grown just for mulch, and some are invasive that are used for mulch. Fallen leaves are free, so that's a great option. Mulch application, mulch should be applied for about 2 to 3 inches thick and pulled away from the base of the plant. That can actually cause some problems for the plant, so pull it away from the plant base. You just want to cover the sides of the root ball with the mulch, not all the way up to the base, and rake old mulch. These are all practices your professional can use. This is a really big one that I've been answering a lot of questions about recently is non-FFL mulches. So cypress mulch, we don't recommend because this can come from trees that are harvested from our wetlands and just turn straight into mulch. You're not sure if it's a byproduct or not. Colored mulch is often made from scrap wood from construction sites that can be contaminated with harmful chemicals. So we do not recommend colored mulch, which is very, very popular throughout the state. A lot of people like to mulch with gravel and shells. We don't recommend that, nor do we recommend rubber or artificial turf because this can contribute to urban heat islands. And they also don't enrich the soil at all, and they don't, some of them don't retain water, and some of them do a pretty poor job of even just the reason that they're there is to block weeds. You can see in this picture, all the weeds are coming through the gravel, and that is a nightmare to weed. So stick with Florida-friendly mulches. This is a big one that you see a lot in commercial spaces is volcano mulching. So don't mulch up to the tree trunk. This can hold moisture and rot the tree. You don't want to mulch all the way to the curb or the water's edge because as the mulch breaks down, it can release nutrients into our waterways. And this is a big one that we're seeing more and more is do not mulch your entire landscape without planting any kind of vegetation in it. A yard completely full of mulch with no plants in it is not Florida friendly. So it should be used in a landscape bed to the benefit of landscape plantings. Okay, attracting wildlife. A lot of the attracting wildlife really comes from right plant, right place, and when you're designing your landscape. But your landscape professional can provide safety and can provide shelter. So ask your landscape professional to leave the leaves in part of your yard if that's possible. Maybe not in your front yard, but in your backyard when the leaves fall, it's okay if they stay there. And this provides habitat and this provides place for insect nests and same thing with brush piles. This can provide cover and nesting areas. Does your landscape professional protect beneficial insects and other wildlife? When you have pest issues, are they just broadcasting pesticides over your entire yard, affecting both beneficial insects and pests? And are they using pesticides that kill, are targeted at every insect? A much more Florida-friendly approach would be spot treat areas where you see pest damage and using an appropriate pesticide that only targets the pest. And we'll have some examples of that in this next section. Managing yard pests responsibly. Integrated pest management is what we recommend through UF IFAS. And this is the opposite of what I described before. Instead of just going out with a really harmful pesticide and spraying the entire yard, we want to avoid pests, detect them, and treat them responsibly. So this means planting pest-free plants. So if you're bringing pests into your landscape from the outset, you're going to have problems. And scouting your landscape for pest problems routinely, looking for damage, looking for the pests themselves. When the pests are detected, identify the pests before considering a landscape plan, management plan. So this is, I have a vegetable garden. So I have these every spring and every fall, more so in the spring. These are called armyworms. They're a caterpillar and they affect my vegetables. So I use a targeted pesticide called BT, and it only kills caterpillars. It doesn't affect my bees, doesn't affect any butterflies or other pollinators, no ladybugs, just the pest itself. And that's what you want your professional to be doing as well. For treating pests, we recommend that you go for the least toxic treatment first. So this could be horticultural oils, insecticidal soaps. Again, spot treat instead of blanketing the entire area with pesticides. Do they post a notice of pesticide treatment? And do they follow the label for pesticides? All of these are really important questions to ask your landscape professional. Okay, recycling yard waste. This is going to be about pruning, tree care, and waste recycling. This is a really big one, pruning. You see people not really taking care of their plants through the way that they are pruned. It can really cause them stress and cause them to be less healthy. So you want to ensure that hedges and shrubs are pruned with the bottoms wider than the tops. That's because you need the bottom of the plant to be able to get sunlight. That's how they make their food. That's how the plant makes its food. So if the leaves on the bottom of the plant aren't getting light, it's going to die, or at least the bottom part of it will. Use a 3-point cut method for larger branches. This helps prevent tearing on the branch and makes a much cleaner cut. The palms, y'all, the palms, this is a big one. The 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock method for pruning palms. Imagine a clock. Here's 9 o'clock, here's 3 o'clock, and you don't want to touch any of the leaves that are above that line. You just want to cut dead branches that are below that 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And so you can see in this picture, this pruner is just going to leave a little mohawk on top, and that is just not healthy for the palm. And that's how they make their food. If they don't have leaves to make photosynthesis, then it's going to affect the health of the palm. We recommend hand pruning on shrubs to obtain a healthier plant and a more natural appearance rather than hedge trimmers. Sterilize equipment between job sites and check for state and local rules about pruning. For tree care, if you have a big tree, you should really just hire a certified arborist. So they have to pass an exam and they have to have continuing education to stay updated with their certification. They can they can identify potentially hazardous trees. They're knowledgeable about tree care and tree needs, and avoid any tree company that wants to top a tree. That means just like cutting off all the top branches, and it's really unhealthy for the tree. So just avoid a company that uses those practices. And then waste recycling. I see that a lot too. I'm sure all of you do, is the leaves bagged up and put on the side of the road. If it is an option for you, leave your leaves in the yard. You can use them as mulch in landscape beds. You can leave them on the lawn for wildlife habitat. Same thing with grass clippings. Grass clippings, when they decompose, they release nutrients. And if they release nutrients on your lawn, then they are helping your lawn in the long run. And that's something that you can ask for in your yard. I don't have any specific ones for this for stormwater runoff, but basically, do you want to know if your landscape company is helping to prevent pollution through stormwater runoff? We have this infographic here that kind of displays all of the runoff pollution that can come from a landscape. You have the runoff from the roof, the yard could have fertilizer, pesticides, pet waste, motor oil, the grass clippings going into the storm drain. All of these things can enter the storm drain and go into the sewer. And a lot of the times, that water is not treated at all before it reaches an above ground waterway. So, for example, here in Gainesville, we have two main creeks. And uh, when runoff enters those creeks, it has not made it to the water treatment plant before it gets to the creek. And this is why it's just so important to think about these practices and consider if your landscaping company is thinking about water when they are thinking about protecting the environment when they are maintaining your lawn. Finally, we have protect the waterfront. Main thing for this is a low maintenance zone around water bodies. And this can be very controversial because a lot of communities will mow right up to the edge of their retention pond or up to the edge of the canal. They will fertilize right up to the edge. And all of this, this allows pesticides, fertilizers, grass clippings, all of that goes into the pond or the waterway, and then the water becomes polluted. And these poor people who have bought houses on waterfront property, and then they have this pond that it's got scum and dead fish, and it just does not look very attractive. This can help be prevented with a low maintenance zone. This 10 to 20 feet big in between the shoreline and the water. And this means no mowing, no fertilizer, no pesticides. And to really make it nice, you can plant it with native plants. The reason you want native plants is because water plants can travel and multiply very easily. So you want to make sure that and they become invasive. So you want to make sure that you're using native plants. They help protect the waterfront from runoff. They absorb nutrients, provide wildlife habitat, and prevent erosion. And people get nervous because wildlife in Florida is dynamic and exciting. But really, if you can provide these birds and fish and reptiles a nice place to live, then you just really are making your pond a part of the ecosystem rather than just a holding pond. So now we're going to move into guidance for choosing a landscape professional. So this process is way more straightforward for a homeowner who owns their home and also makes decisions about their landscape. But some people live in HOAs and they don't make decisions about their landscape. The community might make the decisions for them. So if you maintain your own yard, or you want to encourage your HOA board to hire a company with different management practices, these slides and guidelines can be helpful. And we will be discussing resources specifically for HOAs after this section. So who uses landscape professionals? So we have our homeowners who decide, what plants they want, how often they want their yard mowed, things like that. But we also have residents whose communities might make decisions about the personal landscape, the private property, but also commercial landscape. Um, Landscape professionals can provide a lot of benefits. Time is probably the big one, having that time back from not having to spend the time mowing, pruning, edging, all that stuff. That is a really great resource that they provide. Also, knowledge and all those certifications and ordinances that they must know about. Plant knowledge, irrigation, fertilization, pest management, and pruning. These are all things that landscape professionals can be and should be trained in. They also often will have better equipment than homeowner equipment, and they know how to use that equipment safely. And all this put together can really increase your property value. So when you're thinking about what do I need from a landscape professional, are you just using them to mow? Or are you considering any of these other services? Because there's a whole gamut of what a professional can provide for you. So when you're choosing your company, start with an interview. They might tell you what they're expecting in their services, but if you can tell them what you're expecting from the services they provide, you need to communicate that with them. You want a written estimate, make sure they understand your expectations about what work is included, the frequency of their visits, and what work has, are they going to tell you what they did that time and when they did visit? And are they training their employees? And are they using FFL maintenance practices? All those things that we just went over in those lists before. You want to make sure that they have good experience, strong references, and you can find this on their social media profiles or other online reviews. These are some examples of certifications for landscape professionals. We talked about the FFL certifications that we provide, but there are other agencies and organizations that also provide certifications. So Florida Water Star is water conservation, and FNGLA is the Florida Nursery Growers and Landscape Association. They have a lot of certifications, really intense training that really do a great job of educating landscapers. Irrigation Association, that's mostly for irrigation contractors. ISA, that is the International Society of Arborists. This is the certification you should look for if you're hiring an arborist to do any tree work. And then registered landscape architects. This is another professional association certification you can look for. So the QR code takes you to our website where you can learn more about these certifications. Here are some resources for hiring Florida friendly. This code takes you to an EDIS document. If you're feeling a little panicky right now that you're not going to be able to remember everything I talked about, this is an EDIS publication that describes pretty much all of the content that I went over today. And this is useful for both homeowners and HOAs. We also have the model maintenance contract. This is a Word document that you can edit to suit your needs, and it includes pretty much anything that you would need in a landscape contract. For example, it describes the scope of the work, the payment schedule, how to modify the contract. It defines all of the maintenance practices. And so if you say, oh yeah, the contract might say, oh, I want my yard mowed. Well, you can specify, I want my St. Augustine grass mowed to this specific height, and you can agree to that in the contract. So as I said, it was available as a Word document. You can go through it. You can highlight the things that you want to include in your contract, or you can just try to use this as the basis of a brand new contract. You'd have to talk with the landscape management company to see what really works for them and their services. So what if you live in an HOA and you see landscaping practices in your community that you would like to change? If you want to incorporate some of these practices that we talked about, you have the power to do that, and it can come from the ground up or from leadership. So if you serve on your HOA board, or maybe you serve on your landscaping committee, this is change that you can work with your board to enact in your community. But if you're not on the board, you live in a neighborhood that you paid a great membership fee to belong to, and you live with neighbors who might agree with you. And so if you organize from the ground up, you can also organize to see these changes. So the first step in changing some of these landscaping practices is to understand your community. So which landscaping rules currently exist, and do they exist in the codes, covenants, and restrictions, or do they exist in the architectural standards or in another document? Where does it specifically outline the landscaping practices? I've seen, hedge height requirements and the color you can choose for your edging, how close shrubs have to be planted to the house or to the street. Where do those rules exist? Okay, who are the key players in your community? Almost every community is going to use a community association manager or a property manager. This is an individual who works with your HOA board to hire out your landscape contract, your irrigation contract. Who is this person? What do they know about Florida friendly landscaping? You might have landscape contractors or irrigation contractors. What company do you use? Do they know about FFL? And then there are committee chairs or other key community leaders who might be good people to talk to. There are also existing committees. So the Architectural Review Committee is the one who grants homeowners their any changes that they want to make in their landscape or settles disputes about the architectural standards. There might be a landscaping community or environmental community, and these are good places to start to initiate change. So the second step is to learn more about FFL. This QR code takes you to our FFL publications where you can download our handbook for home landscape. So if you are interested in learning more about the 9 principles, this is a really great resource. It goes really in depth about all of those 9 principles I talked about. And so these are things that you can advocate for in your community. We also have the guide to plant selection and landscape design. That's a static book, but we also have an app. We're adding more and more plants to this list. These are approved Florida-friendly plants that have gone through faculty review, and it gives you lots and lots of information about where the plants do well in your state and according to the zone. So a plant that does really well in Miami is not going to do well in Gainesville. What are the water requirements, the light requirements? You can learn all of that through either the plant guide or the plant app. Both are available on our website. Okay, we also have FFL resources for HOAs. This QR code takes you to our resources page. You can learn more about the state statutes regarding HOAs. You have model covenants, codes, and restrictions, and this is language that can be inserted into your governing documents if that is something that you end up needing to change. You have example legal language that you can change your landscaping rules, and we have it all written out and available, and it's been reviewed by attorneys. And we also have lists of professionals who have gone through the FFLCP program and the GIBMP program, and you can search to find a new company or to search to see if your existing company has gone through either of these trainings. Another step is to learn more through Gardening Solutions. This is a IFAS recommendations about all kinds of gardening and landscaping topics. So we have really extensive resources for lawn care, fertilizing, and irrigation, but other topics like ornamentals, vegetables, seasonal plantings, things like that. So if you are new to Florida or new to landscaping, use that QR code and find out more from Gardening Solutions. Okay, so step 3 is engage with your community. Start small. I went over a lot of information today, a lot of avenues for making change in your community, but just choose 1 or 2 things that you can succeed at so you'll continue your momentum and feel like, oh yeah, we are making changes around here. So some possible changes that you could advocate for in your community is that low maintenance zone around water bodies, irrigation audits. So having an irrigation company come out and check for leaks and clogs and make sure the emitters and landscape heads are pointing in the right direction. Make sure that irrigation systems are set to follow water management district or local restrictions. Often it's 2 times a week. So if your sprinklers are going off automatically more than 2 times a week, you might not be following water management restrictions. So check and see. That is a really great first step. Pruning palms with the 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock method, that's a really great step as well. Make sure your landscape professionals are using slow release fertilizer and that the fertilizer is applied outside of the turf dormancy period, and that pesticide applicators are using spot treatment instead of broadcast applications. So those are some ideas. If you wanted to see some changes, that's where you could start. So the next step is to recruit your neighbors. So you can use community newsletters, social media, community meetings to invite neighbors to get involved with some of these changes. You could start an FFL club in your community that teaches the 9 principles and helps homeowners learn more about it. And if you want people to volunteer to get involved with something that they could be using their time otherwise. Emphasize the benefits of community connection and the social benefits of volunteering. We've worked with some neighborhoods who said working on these FFL projects really brought their communities together. And it's just a really great way to get to know your neighbors and to make positive change. Engaging with your community can mean partnering with Extension. Every county has an Extension agent, and you can partner with your Extension office to provide educational presentations to your board or your committees, or for residents. They can come do landscape evaluations, and they can give expert guidance on integrating FFL landscaping principles and activities into your HOA. So this code will take you to a website to contact your local county extension agent. Also, contact your local county extension agent for any specific question that you might have about this presentation. I'm here in Gainesville. I don't know the ordinances in Broward County. I don't know the best plants for Manatee County, but you know who will know is your local county extension agent. So this is a really great resource. You can give them a call, you can go visit, and they will be really glad to help you out. Another thing to consider is working within your documents. So if you have governing documents, you need to be following your governing documents. Any changes that you do make still needs to follow your HOA's rules. If the changes you do want to make are outside of your community's rules, then that's when you would look into changing your rules. And that can be quite the process, depending on where the rules exist. If it's in your codes, covenants, and restrictions, that's kind of more difficult to change. But if your landscaping rules are in your architectural standards and are reviewed by your architectural review board, that is much easier to change. But remember, just any changes you make in your community, you have to follow your HOA rules. And so finally, if you do end up making some good changes, celebrate. Any small change is worth celebrating, and it keeps your momentum going. You can highlight and recognize your community leaders, volunteers, any projects that have been successful. Show everybody what you got done, and celebrate yourself, and it'll get more people involved, and it'll keep your momentum going. So your yard can make a difference. Your community can make a difference. So I'm going to go through I have a couple more slides with resources. So this is our resources page on our website. This has our apps, publications, lots of other resources there. And this is the QR code just to our main website. You can learn a lot from our website. We have a lot of information. And finally, this is my contact information. Please feel free to get in touch. And it has been really nice talking with you guys today, and I'm happy to answer questions that I can answer. Might not be able to answer everything, but I'm going to do my best.
All right, thank you. We have some great questions that you guys asked today. So we're going to have a few minutes to answer some of them. And I just want to clarify that the next webinar is not in December, it's February 17th. So my mistake. Okay, so Claire, we have some questions. So you said that rain sensors are required by law. Is this for newly installed irrigation systems or all systems, and how is it enforced?
It is required for any automatic irrigation system. And so if you have your irrigation system on a timer that comes on 3 times a week, twice a week, you are required to have one. Is it enforced? No, it is not enforced. And so unfortunately, a lot of these laws are in place, but the enforcement is low. Alachua County is actually the only county in the state that enforces FFL. So if you have FFL issues in your HOA or with your county ordinances or city ordinances, Alachua is the only one that will come out and say, hey, you are irrigating on your sidewalk, and that's against our codes, our city codes, so you need to change that, or you will get fined. So that is something that unfortunately is not statewide.
All right, thank you. Next question is they would like some information on biochar as a soil amendment.
My only experience with biochar is through like organic gardening. That's just something you would have to ask your landscape company if they're familiar with. Anything that can improve your soil through adding organic material, whether that's compost, biochar, mulch, grass clippings, um, increases the soil structure. It makes it better and it makes it retain water and it makes it just like retain nutrients better too. So if you're growing your landscape in sand, all of the water, not all of it, but a lot of water and nutrients are washing out of your landscape. So anything you can do to add organic material to your landscape, go for it. Unfortunately, I don't know a ton about biochar.
All right. Okay. So how do we locate a contractor who is proficient in fertilizer?
Okay, so you want to go to our website, and unfortunately, I do not have the map of our website memorized in my brain. But some of those QR codes that I put up in the presentation will take you to a list of professionals who have been GI fertilized. And so if they apply fertilizer, they are required by law to go through our training and pass the test to get the certification. And so you want to make sure you can put in the name of your landscaping company and they should come up with if they have been certified or not. Same thing with FFLCP. If you want to hire a professional that's been through our Florida Friendly Landscaping Certified Professional Program, there's a list of those professionals as well, listed by county.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So what do you do if your grass is actively growing during the county restrictions for fertilizing?
You don't apply fertilizer. There are either oftentimes a landscape professional will load up before the restrictions take place with a special kind of fertilizer that is 65% slow release fertilizer. But yeah, it's a blackout. You can't fertilize. And so you got to wait till your restrictions are over and look at your lawn. Is your lawn looking good? Like a lot of times your grass will still look great if you don't fertilize. And so it's important to follow those restrictions, but then also just kind of evaluate how much fertilizer do I really need? Our recommendations are if you choose to fertilize, we don't say at IFOS, you must fertilize, and it's really recommended that you fertilize. If you choose to fertilize, this is the maximum amount that you can fertilize. And so, look out in your yard, see if you're pleased with the way that your landscape is performing. And then if you're not, when the blackout is over, you can start on a fertilizer regimen again.
All right. Thank you. This is a two-part question. Is lawn aeration manual or chemical an FFL practice? And is top dressing recommended?
So it is recommended for more professional landscapes, like golf courses and sports fields. And if you feel so, where we would recommend it, and I'm actually kind of looking into adding this to some of our recommendations, is if you live on an area with highly compacted soil. And so that would be for the aeration, and that's where the landscape company will come and like spike holes into your lawn, and it will kind of open up the compaction to allow water and nutrients to infiltrate. It's not something that you necessarily need unless you are highly compacted, which a lot of new developments are. Like they are built on highly compacted soil and fill dirt that has very little nutrients. So if you have fill dirt under your soil in your yard, compost is a great option. Um, you can do it as a homeowner. Just go out and apply a thin layer of high quality compost with a shovel and kind of like maybe 1 or 2 inches. That's something that you would also not want to do before a heavy rain. Might not want to do that. You have to remember that compost also has nutrients, even though it's an organic, it comes from an organic source, it still has phosphorus, it still has nitrogen that can pollute our waterways. So, but building up your soil helps retain nutrients, helps retain water, And if you have poor quality soil, that is definitely an option for you.
I think we have one more question, time for one more question. What is the 3-point cut method for branches?
Mm, that is Uh, boy, I'm not an expert on pruning, but instead of just like one cut that you're going and you kind of like at the bottom, you're leaving just like that little bit of wood that as the weight of the branch falls, it might peel off the bark and peel off some of the wood. So you do, I think it's one cut here, and one cut from the bottom. But hey, you know who really would know about that is a landscape professional who's been trained in pruning. So if it's a big limb, you probably don't need to be pruning that by yourself anyway. So that's something that I would consider for an arborist.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your information on HOAs today. And thank you all for joining us for this homeowners webinar. Hope to see you again in February 17th.